Yesterday marked 2 years to the day since the government put Britain into the second COVID lockdown. Do you remember that? And back then, the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, earnestly told us on television to stay at home and protect the NHS. Now he's telling us to stay at home and watch the television and watch him as he chomps his way through a few kangaroo testicles in the jungle. You try saying that. Now, the impact on the NHS of a nation tuning in and the resultant spike in winter vomiting bug cases is as yet unknown, but this is out of order. And I call Matt Hancock a friend and I'd say it to his face. He says, oh, it's the right time to go. The government's stable, Jez. Really? Stable. The Home Secretary's hanging by a thread. Our public finances are in the dunny. Do you see what we did there? And we're about to be whacked with tax hikes to help fill the 50 billion quid black hole left by Truss's disastrous Turner's PM. If that's stable, no. Joining me now are not one, we've a budget, but two former I'm a Celebrity contestant, star of Homes Under the Hammer, Martin Roberts, and Bow Down. This is a first for me. The first ever King of the Jungle from back in 2002, 20 years ago. The legend that is Tony Blackburn, ladies and gentlemen. How are you, gang?
Very well, thank
Pretty
you.
good, yes. Now, listen, Matt Hancock, today, it is reported, is going into the jungle. Some people say upwards of £350,000. He's been suspended. Well, he's had the whip suspended from the Tory party, same as happened to Nadine Dorries. He had a pretty colourful time, didn't he, when he was caught snogging his secretary he's still in love with. I'd love to know your view. Let's start... Sorry, Martin, you just have to wait, because we've got to bow down to the legend. I'm going to call you Tony. Tony Blackburn, what do you make of this, seriously?
It's such a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, this is the worst time to go because the country's in a real crisis at the moment. He's probably going in there actually to get a bit of money to pay his electricity bills that are rocketing up like everybody's at the moment. I don't know. It's very, very tricky. I mean, he should really be staying at home and his constituency, he's been paid to do that. On the other hand, I think he's going to give some of the money to the charity for dyslexia, I believe. And also, he's done an amazing amount of publicity for I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. So all the money that they're paying him, it's been worthwhile even before he gets in there. I don't know. I mean, Doris Nadine went in there. Penny Morton did the splash, and they seem to be all right. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does. It's going to be tough for him because I think people are going to vote him to do the bush tuck trials every single night.
Martin, thanks, Tony, you legend. Can't believe it. Tony Blackburn's on my show. Same as you, Martin, can I just say? Martin, the problem is, as Tony quite rightly alluded to, right, it's the cynic in me says, he's never going to get back into government. Most of this country will not forgive him for what they perceive happened during that second and first lockdown. Yes, he talks about dyslexia, and I know him quite well, and it's a passionate thing, and he will say 12 million people watch every night, and I'm doing my job. But right now, if you were in his constituency, Martin Roberts, and you were a married man who was struggling to pay your bills, and you thought, right, he's on 80 grand a year, he's been flown first class to Australia, he's picking up 350 grand, you wouldn't think he'd be the sort of person who should be an MP for you, would you?
No, I mean, realistically, Matt Hancock is looking after Matt Hancock, isn't he? However he positions it, that's the only way you can look at it. And the families of bereaved people who I know, some of them put him as the person to blame, they must be absolutely fuming right now. And even if he gave away all his money that he got for doing it, in terms of raising his profile, in terms of after dinner speaking or in terms of celebrity engagement, he knows that, he's going to be in a good position, moving forward. So I just think he's kind of just thrown the towel in and gone, I might as well be whatever it is for whatever as whatever, because, really, I mean, I think maybe that whole thing with Rishi blanking him when he was going into number 10, it might have been the final straw. He just thought, I'm never going to be able to do this anymore. So I might as well, think about the future after this. The sad thing is, he is still currently an MP, isn't he? And he has constituents who rely on him. He has a job in Parliament. If things go wrong, he needs to be there to put his oar in and all that kind of stuff.
You look like you're phoning us from the jungle because your thing's frozen. So I'll just go to Tony a second. You see, it's true. The older generation... Oh, you're unfrozen now. Tony, the thing is... we can talk about, you know, what good it'll do, but you can't hide in the jungle, can you? I suspect that everybody will want to ring up and make him do everything. What was your experience like? People always say, oh, it's much harder than I thought. I mean, is it? Really?
Well, it is. I mean, particularly now, because it's much more. People are being asked to do ridiculous things now. When I did it, it was tough. It was a tough show to do, but I enjoyed every single moment of it. I mean, the only thing that happened to me, I got bitten by a snake. But that's nothing next to what they're being asked to do now. You know, buried in coffins with mice with them, things like that. So it's a show that I enjoyed doing very, very much at the time. If somebody asked me to do it again, I wouldn't want to do it again, particularly at the moment, because I don't know, I love animals and I love the outdoor life. And it made, from my point of view, it changed me as a person. It made me a much better person because I got used to being with people much more. And it's an interesting thing to go through. So it's going to be interesting to see. And I think a lot of people go on there to say, look, I normally go on television, I'm like this. This is the way I am. You know, after a couple of days out there, Matt Hancock is certainly not going to be able to hide who he is. So we're going to see him for what he is. And it's going to be interesting.
That's really interesting, you see. Martin, if I can pick up Tony's point. So you'd say it's a snake pit out there. You say you talk about people voting. I suspect that, as I said, you know, everybody will want to vote Matt Hancock to do whatever disgusting trial there is to simply pay him back. But you talk about, you know, how we see the real side. Do you think that's part of his idea? Do you think he thinks that maybe they'll realise that I fell in love with a woman perhaps I shouldn't have fallen in love with and I did my best? Do you think it's a PR charm offensive as well somehow?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure he'll be hoping that he gets a chance to put his side of things maybe that we haven't heard. But just on the whole trial thing, when you're there, although you think it would be terrible to be picked for the trials, it is so boring a lot of the time that you actually relish the opportunity. Yeah. So by ironically voting him to do those trials, people will be giving him a chance to be more on television. What I think the key one is going to be is who gets voted out first, because that is an absolute opportunity for the public to say what they feel. And if Matt Hancock stays around, it's going to get a lot of people thinking. If he gets voted out first, well, there you go. The public have had their say.
It's also one of the things that, and you two both have done it, you wonder as well about the mental side of it. People talk about, as you just said, Martin, you know, it's boring and the tension of are you going to be voted out and all of that. You have to be pretty strong. Did you both struggle with the impact of, you know, you sit there in the morning, oh, they voted for me, they hate me, or they haven't voted for me because I'm not doing... Do you play a part? Let's start with you, Martin. Did you play a role or were you... I mean, people always say, oh, no, I was me, but I'm sure some play a role, don't they?
I'm sure some people do. I mean, I didn't, but... No, I think both of us, you could definitely say we were just us. And that's that, from my point of view, people see through, I think, people who are just putting it on. Of course, you have no idea what is going on back in the UK. You've got no idea how the show's been edited. And the most insignificant little moments in a day can be blown out of all proportion. So until the vote happens, that is when you start to get a feeling of what's being put out there on television or in the newspapers. Up until that point, you are absolutely in a bubble, away from everything that's going on. You've got no feedback. So you just, as I said, the voting off thing is your only indication of how you're coming over.
Tony, when you came out of that bubble and you watched it back, did you recognise the experience, or did you think to yourself, oh my God, that's been edited, that looked completely different to what I thought went on?
Well, I never watched it back, to be honest with you. I'd had enough of it by the time I'd been out there. I never found it boring. I enjoyed every moment of it. But it's absolutely right. It is very heavily edited. So sometimes it's not quite the way it comes over. So from that point of view, and also you've got to, if you go in there, you've got to be very careful. I mean, my wife and my mother at the time tried to talk me out of doing it.
Did they?
And I wanted, absolutely. Yeah, they didn't think I'd be any good at it. But you've got to be very careful because it can ruin your career. I mean, I know a couple of people, I'm not going to mention their names, completely ruin their career. So you've got to be very careful. You've got to be very positive about it as well. And as Martin said, you just got to be yourself because you can't act 24 hours a day. No. And after a couple of days, it does get you. And you start sitting around that fire and saying things that you've yelled at other people for saying, and you starting missing your family after 2 hours. Things like that. It's ridiculous, but it's an interesting thing to go through. But as you say, it is very heavily edited. I enjoyed it very much, though.
I was going to say, Martin, to finish, you look at the whole programme, and in the past people used to say, they're going to pay a tax bill, or it's somebody who wants to reboot their career. There seem to be bigger stars by the minute. Mike Tindall, who's part of the royal family, is on this year. Boy George, they've been after for a long, long time. Seems a different sort of contestant nowadays, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to say, if you're a celebrity booker, you would have been absolutely cock-a-hoot getting a yes from Matt Hancock, let's be honest. Because as Tony said, the amount of publicity it's got for the show is just, I mean,
well, all I can say is that you're both legendary, and I hate to have to go, but I think a lot of people will tune in to see Matt Hancock potentially put a kangaroo's testicle in his mouth.